and then I'll present. Okay, cool. If for whatever reason you can't see it, there is a feature in here where you should be able to put the Q&A. It's like on the far right. And so just do everything as a Q&A. We had a lot of people join, so I didn't want the chat to be going crazy. So hopefully you can all see this and we are going to dive in. So I'll start with introductions. Thanks everyone for joining. I love doing these webinars. So my name is Clinical Bell, and I founded both and just about a year ago. I always say founded is like a strong word because it's more become like this side project community than an actual like crazy big business. But I love helping people navigate all their different career questions because I went through this. I was someone who was trying to figure out which direction to go in my own career and ended up deciding to quit my full-time job and go consulting. And it has been so great for me and my family to do this part-time. But part of one of the things I've become fascinated about with a background in psychology, and also in the work that I've done with all these parents is that oftentimes when you're trying to navigate your career, finding tension in your life, it's because there's something that you really enjoy doing in your past, like as a child or early adolescence, that you miss, and it's kind of coming up in what you are looking to do. So anyways, we'll dive right into the deck and hopefully that makes sense. So here we go. Okay. And again, like I said, like logistics wise, if you have any questions, just put them in the Q&A and I'll try to continue answering as we go through. So, okay. So first I'll start with this sort of myth. So I think a lot of people are told that career pivots are about reinventing yourself and finding this like new version of yourself. And I actually don't think that's right at all. I don't think that we're trying to find something new. I actually think oftentimes we're going back to something. So career pivots are usually not like leaps in this unknown. They're sort of more of these returns. So people returning to their interests, their talents, part of themselves that kind of got buried under adult responsibilities. And I like this part, like clues were there long before the job title. And so what we'll be doing today is a few different exercises and thinking about trying to like dig into that part of you. For me, a lot of the parts that came out in the things I wanted to do were things that I had liked as a child. And also just kind of thinking even like junior high, high school, like still that area of your life. But trying to think through like when we're using like creative sides to what you like to do, or what were things that your parents noticed you doing all the time as a kid. And maybe you even noticed this if with your own kids. So I liked this exercise. It's sort of like guess the career. So these are actual true stories of people I have worked with that ended up pivoting from one career to another career because of things that they liked doing when they were kids. And so a couple of these examples. So one of the clients I worked with was in marketing. And when she really thought about what she loved doing as a kid, she was really into like rearranging her furniture. Like she would redo her bedroom almost every weekend. So we can guess what she becomes. Another kid was the person who like directed all the kids in the playground. She was like, oh my gosh, I was always the one out there like organizing the games or pitching the lemonade stand or doing things like that. Another person I worked with kept this like running list of what she called injustices, which was really like these annoyances of her older brother that she had to fix, but she was like very meticulous about it. And then another person was like, I actually like was always meddling with things and like took the VCR apart just to see how it worked and things. So this people I had worked with, the one woman I talked with, like I said, she was in this sort of like marketing world, ended up becoming an interior designer after. Felt like a huge crazy jump, but really she was like, I am back to my roots. Like I love doing this. This always brings me so much joy. The person who ended up being this creative director was actually working in a finance job and was like, I just really, when I had a kid, I started getting into the play side of my brain. Like I remembered what it was like to see my kid organize these things and watch them try to like round people up and try to get creative with the different things they did. And so they did a pivot to that. The person with the list of annoyances was someone who I think was marketing again, and really was just like, I constantly am seeing things in the world through people being bullied or people that just can't stand up for themselves or different things like that. And so they decided to be a policy advocate. And then someone who was in some sort of world where they were working for a tech company, but more on the project management side, was like, I really just wish I'd gone to school and tried to figure out more of like the mechanical side of how everything works, because that's what I find so interesting. So just some examples of people where I think for a lot of people, there is something deep down that they want to do, but the tension becomes that it just feels like too big of a leap. Like it feels so random, or it's something that they're just like, I can't go from being this executive to being, in the medical field or something like that. But the reality is that it's not as much random as it is going back to your roots a little bit. So we're going to talk about this. So there was actually a study done in 2022 where they looked at a bunch of different people who were in their careers years later and went back to looking at their interests from when they were children. And there was actually a really strong correlation between the people that they measured and what they actually became. And I thought this study was really interesting because they basically found that there was not only just a correlation between what the adolescent interests were and what they ended up being more than a decade later, but the point being that like, just because you loved something at 14 doesn't mean it's what you're going to be, but there'll always be some tension and a sort of thread between the things that truly brought you interest and what you were good at. And a lot of people just don't end up in those things because they don't feel like necessarily a tangible career, or perhaps at the time. But there is a lot of strong connection with it. And so a lot of people, as they get there at this point of their life where they're like, I just feel stuck. I feel like I'm not helping in the capacity I was. I think a lot of women in general, and also when you become moms, like we have a strong tendency to want to help people, and that comes out in different fields. And so a lot of what I hear from people, and this, I saw a lot of people put this on the forum when they filled out this for the webinar, but was you often get to this point where you're like, I just feel like what I'm doing doesn't matter. Like, I feel like I'm not making a difference. And so I think when a lot of people look back on the things that they hoped they would be doing as a kid, or that they still deep down want to be doing, there's a strong tie between that, right? Like, that's why so many people want to be doctors or police officers or things like that when they're little kids, is as much as we don't really understand the full impact of that, you see those careers as cool because they're out there in the community, they're doing things, they're helping people. And so I think that runs really true with a lot of us too. And so we're going to do some exercises on this. So I always talk about it this way, like interest is actually an emotion. So it really pulls at you in the same way that fear or joy does. And so that's why losing touch with something that interests you can really feel like a loss, not just something that you outgrew. A lot of people, when you think back on your interests as a kid, so like I'll be using myself in some of these examples and also some other stories. But for me, I quit my job when I was in the healthcare benefit space. So my role was I connected companies in the tech space mostly. So think of companies like Netflix, DoorDash, and things. I connected them with products that they could use to take care of their employees on the benefit side. So think fertility programs, mental health programs, so on. I loved the job, and in my head, it was very fulfilling because I was helping bring programs to people that they actually liked. But when I started doing career exercises with a coach, we started talking about things that I really enjoyed when I was younger. And I am someone who is a connector. I've always really enjoyed connecting people. And some of that came out in my job, connecting the company to the vendors. But I really like working one-on-one with people. I studied psychology. I did my grad in psychology. I thought I was going to be a therapist. And so that still comes out. Like I was part of a program when I was in 6th grade called Natural Helpers. And we were supposed to be the ones who like went and sat with kids at lunchtime if they were alone or things like that. So it's funny when you look back, you see all these puzzle pieces that stacked up, and it makes a lot of sense why you want to get back to a certain world. And once you get there, so now doing this type of work, helping parents align with careers that make sense, like, I don't know, it all like adds up in a way. And so my job and part of this work today is just helping you with those exercises to think through it. So we are going to, typo minutes, but we're going to start with an exercise that's called Time Machine. I'm just going to spend like 3 minutes going through this. And again, if you have any questions as you're going through this, you can put them into the Q&A box. But so with this exercise, I want you to go back to when you were 10. I know that feels so long ago. So just try to think of like end of elementary. You could even go like early junior high, or if you have a memory even earlier of something you like to do as like a true kid, like when you were 4 or 5, like as long as you can think back, what did you do with your unscheduled time? So, and I'm sorry, I should have said this at the beginning, but if you have the capability to have pen and paper, that's a great way to do this. If you want to just put a Google Doc or something so that you can collect this more on like a referenceable place, like do it. But I do want you to write this down or type it if possible. Um, so what did you do with that scheduled time? Like, did you like to build? Did you like to collect things? Were you someone that directed plays or puppet shows? Did you like to fix stuff and tinker with things? Were you like a performer and you loved dance? Did you like to explore? Like, what were things that if you're no adult was telling you? So I'm not talking about like, oh, I did soccer, but my mom signed me up because she thought it would be fun. Like, this is what did you find yourself gravitating toward with your time? And just spend a couple minutes thinking about that and writing it down. I always like to kind of talk through this as you do the exercise, but really think back to what you want. So, like I was saying, like I liked helping people. My mom would always say that I would take stuffed animals and always create like a little area where they could find friends, or I would schedule play dates with my stuffed animals, or I'd always find the stuffed animal alone. Like I was kind of like drawn toward things like that. And I was also really creative in that I did like to really perform and do shows. And so it makes sense that like I liked a lot of speaking things later on in my life. So, anyways, just I'm going to pause with no talking for a minute and let you finish this activity, and then we'll go on to the next one. Okay, so don't share it yet. Just keep that on the page. We'll come back to this in a little bit. So this is kind of like when we talk about this like science of going back. So nostalgia actually is known to boost self-continuity and well-being. There is two researchers, so I'm going to butcher these names, but Sedekidis and Wilchut. And they are two of the most cited researchers on nostalgia. Their work's been repeated in a lot of different countries, and they focus a lot on like positive self emotion. And so, what nostalgia does, like what you just did, even trying to think back to your childhood, is it actually increases three things. So, a sense of social connectedness, a sense of meaning in life, and something called self continuity, which is the felt sense that your present self and your or your past sense and your present self are still the same person. I didn't know that sounds really deep, but it is something that I think for any of you guys being like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, how did I end up here? I feel like I need to quit. That is usually caused by feeling a gap between who your past self was and who your present self was. And so thinking on that nostalgia reminds you like, oh, I am still that person. Like deep down, I still do love creating and I still do love whatever it is that you wrote down. Um, and so this matters a lot for career pivots because basically when life feels kind of disrupted, like there's a layoff or a change, you have a baby, nostalgia kind of acts like this psychological bridge. And so anyways, reaching back to an old interest during a pivot is like one of the most grounding things you can do. And so like, even if you need to take time to call your parents, if you have the capability or ask someone who knew you as a child, like what you like to do, it can be really eye-opening to aligning with some of the things that you're feeling pulled toward, or like something you're feeling like is a project you want to start. So, um, obviously like this isn't about becoming a kid again. Like I think that part of finding the thread, that like underlying need or skill or value, is like just trying to bring more of that into your adult life. So there might be silly things you did as a kid that you're drawn to that obviously don't make sense. Like you're not going to make mud pies for a living, but find the way that you can translate some of those things you like to do into a career that feels like the adult version of what you loved is really interesting. And this comes up a lot for people too. Like I talk about this a lot, but is a mother, or if there's any fathers on here too, when you are with your kids, you're doing a lot of playing, and a lot of us don't have a lot of time for play and creative thinking in our lives. So even if you're like playing with Play-Doh, playing with Magna tiles, like there is a subconscious side that brings up a lot of things that you might have enjoyed doing from that lens when you were a kid. So I always find this really fascinating. Okay, so this is going to be our next exercise. I have this sort of 4 column worksheet, for lack of a better word, that I want you to again pull out your piece of paper and talk through it. So write down, and you can write down more than one thing, type up more than one thing. So the thread pulling is like tying this all together. So what's one thing that was a childhood interest of yours? So again, it can be something really specific, like I wanted to be a doctor, or it can be something like I really enjoyed traveling, or I loved my diary when I was a little girl, or I really actually like to cook. So just this does not have to, don't overthink it. Like if something you love to do is be a cook and you're like, I have absolutely no interest in being a cook, like still write it down. So just follow with me. I think part of like the challenge of these exercises is don't try to make the connection. Just like try to write down something that immediately comes to mind. And then in the second column, we want you to write what it gave you. So let's continue with the cooking. I don't plan to be a cook, but I'll tie this all back together. So I loved cooking as a kid. What did it give you? Like, I just loved being able to experiment. I loved seeing what would happen if I mixed different things together. And I also like really looked for my parents' approval, as much as now as a parent, I know they totally faked it, but of being like, this is so good. Like I loved serving people something that I thought they would enjoy. Okay. And then now the second part of this is thinking about kind of the adult life side of it. So where it shows up. So those feelings you wrote in the what it gave you, where does this show up in your life? Like, are there still areas, continuing with the cooking example, where you're getting to experiment, you're getting to try different things, you're serving people with things and getting their approval? And where is that missing? So this is a 2-part. So I can continue with my own cooking example. Like, I actually feel like it's missing, that I still don't have enough time to really like experiment. Like I would love to have more time to be able to try different things and test different things out and like get that side of things. Where it's showing up for me is I feel like through this work I'm even doing, I love being able to put things out there. And even with like Instagram, I do it. Like I can tangibly see with people's comments or messages to me, like where something was meaningful and valuable, and like sort of the equivalent of like, this is so good. Like that fills me up. So just, I'll pause again for one quiet minute and let you guys think about this. Again, childhood interest can be whatever comes to mind, does not need to tie back what sort of feeling it gave you. And then thinking about like your current life right now, like where is that showing up and where are you still feel like you're missing things? I'll pause for 1 minute. Okay. And I'll also send some of these exercises out if you want to do them a little later. Okay. So the way to think about this is you're editing your story like in real time right now. So when you are thinking about any sort of pivot, you're basically trying to revise this narrative that you're revising the narrative. Like it doesn't discard this chapter. Think of this as a book that's always ongoing. And some of the best books always have like the craziest plot twists or tying back something. So this idea, McAdams and McLean, I always love referencing like psychology studies. So you'll see this a lot in any of the presentations I do, but they talk about how we build an identity as an ongoing internal story, and bringing back a buried part of yourself is like an edit, not an eraser. So one of the things, and I'll read this a little. So they wrote this paper in 2013 that basically argued that we build our identity as part of this internal story. It links our past, present, and imagined future into something coherent. And one of the things that they found is people who frame hard chapters of their life as this led to something meaningful tend to have better well-being than those who frame the same years as wasted or disconnected. And so the way that you kind of talk about this pivot in your life or where you're at right now as like, I'm adding a chapter that makes the earlier chapters make more sense, lands very differently than like, I'm throwing out everything that I did before. And this is a lot of just like positive reframe psychology, but I really like this because when I left my career, I'd been working so hard to get to where I was. And we were at a point where I was like, 15 years into, I feel like a very chronological, thought out way that I was advancing. And I really did feel like I was throwing everything away. Like I was like, this is dumb. I'm gonna be home with my kids, and that's the best thing ever. I'm gonna start consulting. But like, did I just erase all that work I did? And the reframe of this chapter, like you're just building another chapter, and that chapter wouldn't have existed without the chapters before it, is really important. Like I just think if the more that you can do that, like it will help so much in what you're going through in this revision. Um, okay, so this is another quick exercise. This one's going to be about 2 minutes. So this one's called buried talent inventory. So very similar to some things we've been doing, but you'll see this repetitiveness and just phrased in different ways to try to pull at different memories for you. So I want you to list 3 things that people used to say you were good at or you were always doing before age 15. So I say 3 things. You could also make a longer list. Um, so this can be anything. I mean, like I used to be good at basketball. I used to be good at writing. I was good at math. Like it can be anything scholastic, sports, friendship wise, whatever it is. So make a list, and I usually try to do at least 3 if it's easier for you to make a big one, and then find the one that still gives you that flicker or pull. That's good. But yeah, it's like you look at all these things that people said you were good at, which ones still bring you energy? Like, which ones are you like, oh, I actually do still love writing, or I actually really do love, maybe not, it's like basketball itself, but it's like I like being part of a team, or I loved like that competitive side to what I did. So just go ahead. I'll give you a couple minutes to do this. And again, I want you to like circle or mark the one or ones that still like really light you up. So I'll give you a couple minutes to think about that. And again, I always say too that if you're if you're stumped with this and you're like, I don't even remember what I liked, like this is where it's kind of not phone a friend or family member. Like I've had more during this career work I've done, I've had more and more conversations with like childhood friends, parents, aunts, grandma, like whoever is around that was like, can you tell me about what I was like when I was 10, or, like things like that. And it's funny the things that people will pull out that you don't even remember. So if you really want to like have a comprehensive idea, I always say like reach out to someone from your past that knew you when you were younger, because that can be really helpful too. Okay. So this is like a continued part of that exercise, but I like taking what you did and essentially pulling it into sentences. So this is kind of called like name the thread. So I've always been someone who blank, I lost touch with it when, and I want to bring it back by. So I will like read you an example I wrote down before I did this. So this is just so you can see the sheet. So I've always been someone who notices what's broken and wants to fix it. I lost touch with it when I took a job that wanted me to execute, not question anything. I want to bring it back by asking for one process improvement project back at work. So I'll read that one more time because I think it's like a really helpful one. So I've always been someone who notices what's broken and wants to fix it. I lost touch with it when I took a job that just wanted me to execute, not question anything. I want to bring it back by asking for one process improvement project at work. So think about how this could be in your life. Like using my own example again, like I've always been someone who really wanted to work one on one with help people. I lost touch with it when my job morphed a little bit and became more about like selling a packaged product than actually working one on one with people to see what they really needed. And I really want to bring it back by working with those products directly and trying to figure out the right way to match them with people. And that's ultimately what I do in my consulting. So Yeah. So just think about this one for a second. Um, I think this is tying back in like the what you always liked as a child, or even just like early on when you maybe took the job, like why you originally liked it. And then like I've lost touch with it because maybe it's something that changed in your job, or maybe it's something you weren't expecting about the way the job operates. Or maybe it's just you were taking a bunch of different job opportunities because they were like the right financial career move, and you just lost touch with the original reason you even got into the field you like. And ways you can bring it back. So this can be, I want to bring it back by like the first example I gave, asking for a particular project at work that has some of those elements, like they were talking about with like the project-based work. Or it could be something like leaving and doing consulting. Like I want to bring it back by focusing on freelancing, consulting, finding a new job that focuses on it that way. And I'll just be quiet for like one more minute. So this is another exercise that's called forward casting. And I'll tell you back in the next slide a little bit with some of the research on this because it's really interesting. So if your thread from the prior slide, so I'll go back to this, like I've always been someone who I lost touch with, I want to bring it back. Like if you had full permission to go with one of those things for the next few months, what's like a role or project or direction it points to? And what I mean by that is like wherever the thing that's giving you some value or feeling positive in your life, like if you could run with that, what would it look like? So again, a couple examples, like if you were like, feel like I could I feel like I'm missing the element of creativity in my current job. And I would love to ask for some sort of project related to like marketing to tie that back in. Like, what exactly would that look like? And try to be kind of specific. And I know this is where a lot of people get stuck because they're like, I really don't know what it would be. So just try to think through like anything that you think, like, and it might be outside of your job too. Like it could be, there's no element in my job right now where I could possibly ask for something creative. Like they just wouldn't let me, it doesn't exist. So maybe it's something like I actually have a friend who was saying she wants to start an app, and she said it would be so awesome to hire someone in marketing, and like maybe I should just offer to help her like a few hours a week and just like fill that gap. And what ends up happening with that is while you're volunteering for something, or maybe they have the budget to pay you a little bit, but you can go ahead and have that be kind of your first dive into that world and see if it could make sense. And I will send out the recording. Someone just asked that question. So we have probably like 5-10 minutes of work left, and then I'll save some time for questions. But I know a lot of people have to leave right at the 30 mark. So thank you. Okay. So pause on that exercise. I'm going to go to another one. This is again another study. This was done by Rosensky and Dutton, and this was done like early 2000s, I guess. But I really like this concept. I'll read a little bit about it to you because I want to make sure I do it justice. But so there's a whole body of research on something that's called job crafting, and it's a really interesting thing because it basically found that employees actively reshape their own jobs in 3 different ways without ever getting a new title. And these are 3 different ways they do it. So the first one's called task crafting. And task crafting is literally changing what you do day to day. So volunteering for a part of the project that uses your thread. And when I say the word thread, again, this thread is like referring to tying together the things you like and actively putting them into like tying your past life to your present life. So task crafting is where you redraw everything with your day-to-day tasks. Cognitive crafting is changing how you see the purpose of your role. So a classic example from that research is like a hospital cleaning staff who saw themselves as part of the patient's healing team, not just custodial workers. So same job, just different meaning. That's cognitive crafting. And I'll talk about each of these a little bit more. And then relational crafting. So changing who you spend time with and how. So building a relationship with the team, doing the work that pulls you toward even before you ever make a formal move. So what's really interesting about this is for a lot of people, they're like, I can't financially leave my job right now, or I need to stay for whatever reason, or I'm trying to stay in this job while I figure out what I'm going to do. And so these are things that you can do to make your time more rewarding and just sustainable. So on the task crafting, I'll use like real life examples again. So task crafting is trying to add or exchange different parts of your job that add more value. So I'll even use myself at my last job. I moved a little bit away from working directly with clients and people into selling a product that would help our clients and people theoretically. And I just missed talking to people outside of my company so much that I came up with a like customer feedback approach where we would actually be trying to interview or talk with people about their feedback on the product and just trying to see that. And so I drew that into my job offering, and it was directly related, but it gave me that like light of being able to like actually communicate with people. And I loved that. And so that like probably extended my time at the company when I did that by at least 2 years. Like I was in a really hard spot, and adding something like that back in helped. The cognitive reframe of how you see your role's purpose is also really helpful. So like being in the space I was in, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I actually making a difference? Like I feel like I am just doing this silly job selling things. And so we started looking at quotes from the people using it and being like, wow, actually, like we helped this person through their fertility journey by the way of the product we sold, or we really helped this person through a tough time with the mental health part of what we do. So like it can be really anything from the custodial example of trying to be part of the patient's journey to something in your job of like really trying to see it. And this is often where people like the harder it is to reframe, the more you know that you're a little far away from your guiding light, but it can still really help. And then the relational crafting, really getting to know the people around you. This can be tricky in remote work, and especially if you're a parent and don't have a ton of time to be doing happy hours or networking, but just like really trying to get to know your team, the clients you work with on like a personal level. It can really shift like bringing some of that in, because think of the like pureness of kids and how when they go to a park they just become friends with anyone and everyone. It's like that side of just trying to bring in that relational side of crafting your job and thinking about it. So these are three things that if you're just like as you're going through this and you're trying to bring back the value of what you used to love, these things can be really helpful exercises. Okay, so now we're getting in like the concrete side of things as we get into the final part of this webinar. But so I want you to name like one concrete action for this week. Like this could be something like it's not like network more, or I need to think more about my ideas, but it could be something like call my aunt and ask about what I was like as a kid. Or it could be, I know from this exercise that I like used to love doing my diary and I really did love writing. Like I want to write again. So think of something tangible, like I'm going to do a Substack post, or I'm going to call my aunt and then I'm going to write everything down and do these exercises again. Or that actually inspired an idea of something that like I could propose to my boss is like a small 5 hours additional project that would like add me a lot of value. So write it down, and then whatever it's related to, tell someone. And like you could literally put in the Q&A and tell me if you want, and I'll follow up with you, I promise. But whether it's like your partner, a friend, the aunt you call, who coworker, like whoever it might be, just write it down and try to think of what you're going to do so that you can actually follow up. And when I send out the recap of this, I'm going to send it out probably in a few days or maybe a week from now. So I will check back in on how your things are doing, because this is really where I don't know, it just kind of makes it real. And you can always just even message in the Q&A what you're going to do. I'm always so curious what you guys think. But yeah, so like my one concrete action, I was doing these exercises as I was preparing this deck, but I really miss, like I was saying with the cooking example, that satisfaction side of like, are you doing a good job? Are you doing creative things? And so I was saying to my husband as my concrete action that I really want to do like feedback survey and try to get some data from people so that I don't know, have a little bit more of that in. So I'll give you a second to do this. And also your concrete action. I was joking about this, but if you're someone who had to like multitask during this webinar, maybe you're watching the recording, like your concrete action could just be like doing the exercises in these deck, like actually taking 10 minutes to go through the 4 exercises. There's 4 and writing them down and being like, okay, I am actually going to focus on this and like write it all in and really think about like the childhood things that are like coming up to me that I need to build more into my life. And it can also be things you didn't want to do. We didn't talk about the reverse side because I'm more of a positive psychology person, but it could also be like, I truly hated as a kid having to perform, like having to go on any sort of stage, having to talk in front of the class, doing anything like that. And you might realize that in your job, you're doing a lot of talking or like you're not accelerating because you're expected to speak up in meetings. And like that matters too. So I didn't talk about a lot about the negative side, but you might also remember or be told by family members what you hated. Like, oh, you loved Play-Doh, but you hated performing. And so pay attention to those too, because that can cause a lot of conflict when you have something in your job that you really didn't like as a kid or have never liked since you were a kid. Okay. And so again, think of it this way, you're not starting over, you're just going back to something you left behind. I know that sounds corny, but like so many of us just feel like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm completely starting over. I just wasted the last 15 years of my career, or I'm jumping to something that doesn't make any sense. Like I have decided to build this app or start this new business and it's so unrelated to the things I was doing. Like you're not starting over. You are just going back to things that have always been there, whether big or small in your life, and trying to build it into it. And again, connecting that past self to current self is like how people find so much more happiness in their lives when it all makes sense. And it might not make sense to the people you know now that you didn't know then. And that's part of where like expanding your circles and just finding people who align with the things that have always aligned with you are really, really good for you. Um, so yeah, I know I wrapped up. I tried to keep like 5 minutes of questions for this 45-minute session. So that's it. I am always here. You can email me. You can message me. I respond to a lot of my Instagram messages and things like that too. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you all for joining. This is something that is like a little newer to me. When I first was told about the sort of like childhood interest connection into career, it felt a little woo woo, but I believe so deeply in this. And it's not so much this like out there spiritual thing as it's just who your brain is and how it's wired and the things I can promise you that you really enjoy doing as a kid, you probably still really enjoy doing now. And it's just trying to make that connection to how that plays into effect. So like, that's why I love the cooking example is like, I will never be a cook and I'm not actually even a good cook, but it's the elements of why I liked cooking and the outcome of cooking and the process of cooking that like have helped me really figure out how I build in that creativity, experimenting, serving, presenting things, getting the feedback. Like that is a experience that I enjoyed as a kid. And so I think that's like the deeper side of it. So if you're also having trouble like trying to figure out what that is, you're like, Kalina, I liked singing as a kid and I am like not a singer. Like I am having a hard time translating that. Like, what's your take on it? I'm also happy to talk with you further because it usually is something deeper. Like you love music or you just love like having an audience or you love expressing yourself through words and maybe that is translating to writing. Like there's so many ways to think about it and it's not like this sort of broad horoscope that's just trying to be relevant to everything. Like I really do think that for everything you like doing, there is some weird sort of way to translate to like the way it made you feel. And so I think whether it's cooking, singing, something specific that you like doing, it does have a lot to do with like what that made you feel and what that process was like to do it. And that can be super telling of like what your next thing might look like or be. So anyways, I'll hang around a few minutes for anything in the Q&A and questions. If you have to jump, go ahead. I will let you trickle off. I'm not going to kick anyone off, but I will just sort of sit here. If there's a question that comes up in the Q&A, and you can send it anonymously or not, try to answer live. Otherwise, you can send me a note. And yeah, I'll send out the recording and the deck, and hopefully this was helpful. I know this might seem like basic work to some of you, but to me, it's like been a huge part of like my career reevaluation journey. So appreciate you all. For about one more minute.